2.5 hours that night talking through that feedback and further brainstorming how to, rather than tear the whole thing down, make some fine-tuning changes to that, try and be aggressive at the same time, and ensure that we get our planning activities underway before the majority of council heads out to the NLC event and our annual lobbying trip, so that those priorities are in hand as we meet with our representation in D.C. On the dais this evening, you have an update of the proposal that was put forth last meeting that reflects the updates in dates and activities that we propose occur between now and a newly rescheduled event on the evening, beginning the evening of the 24th of February, and then completing the entire day Friday, the 25th of February. Again, this is a your brainstorming in earnest. We know that you're in regular contact with your constituents, but would like you to increase the tempo and frequency of that communication over the coming weeks to try and ensure that you really got a good sense of what the current needs are, and start to establish your list of top 10 or 15 items that you think are most critical for us to put on the agenda for council and staff focus over the coming several years. To help with that, and I will just for a moment turn it over to Mr. Aker and then pick it back up, but to help kind of reinforce how effective last year's session was and remind us of just how much we put forth, Mr. Aker has got an update on the planning activity from last year. And just to kind of put this in context for the folks in the audience, we kind of took our planning process back after a while, and we've, with the trust of council, kind of broken out into some new terrain. And last year we sat down with a list of 117 individual line items that fit into about 13 different categories of priority. And we sought to put those in a stack rank order and have staff go off and solve them. And we knew that there was no way to solve all 117 in 1 year, and many of those were spread out over the coming couple of years. But we wanted to give some feedback or give some statistics on how much of that had been actually accomplished. And so with that, Mr. Aker, if you can kind of give us some high-level statistics on where we sit.
These are some very high-level numbers, and I've kind of grouped things together. Of the items that that staff has accomplished on behalf for council, I grouped accomplished or in progress into one group. We've got about a little over 75% of those done, and that's in rough numbers, round numbers. And an additional 12% is will be contained within the long-range financial plan. Overall, total about a little over 85% has been accomplished, with something being accomplished on those items.
Just quickly, my hat's off to staff. I think it's interesting for me, and I think we talked about this a bit in our touch base meeting last week, to be able to say, we started with this list of very specific items in many cases, and to have a year tick by and be able to look back and see that that much has actually been crossed off or had work begun, I think is huge. So thank you guys. I think effectively to work through that brainstorm. If you know your list and you want to get that submitted sooner, please feel free to do so. We're looking for very simple submission. It's an item or a concept and the why, so that we can use that to help structure discussion at the retreat. The project plan, if you will, outlines that we need those completed and submitted by the 18th, the end of the day on the 18th, and at that point the committee will work to combine those items into a single list. So we'll update and reconcile items from last year, those that are still in progress or otherwise, and then we'll add in those new items so that we have those assembled for you for your review. One of the things that we've sought to change as compared to last year is that we want to have that list assembled and give you time to reflect on it before you show up at the retreat. So staff has committed to help distribute those. You'll get those delivered on Tuesday to your homes, and that'll give you a good 2.5, 3 days to get some time with that list and spend some time working through your selection of your top priorities before you show up to the retreat on Monday or on Thursday night. And at that point, we'll then be able to merge those and help shape the discussion for the rest of the retreat. The other item that we've changed up a little bit this year is that we've asked staff to provide some of their top focus areas as well, so that those will be coming in and be reflected in that same spreadsheet, so that you've got those additional items to look at and consider for prioritization. The other aspect that we talked about last meeting, and I would like specifically your feedback on this, is the subject of community input. We talked in the proposal last week about formally eliciting feedback from the community that we could also factor in, and I know that many of us have done that in the past and used those as part of our own priority set. One of the items discussed offline with staff is just how do we ensure that we broadly target the community. And if we just send it out on email, if we just post it on the internet, we potentially exclude a good number of our community, whether that be seniors or otherwise. And so would like council's feedback on potentially doing something after the retreat, perhaps leaving our list slightly longer, using a number of options that we could get input from the communications department on to help us narrow that list ultimately. So kind of want to pause for your thoughts on how we potentially weave that facet in. Does that make sense?
You want to do that right first?
Please. Jump in at any point with questions or.
Somebody would just jump in on this particular type, just the survey is what we're talking about now. Does anybody have a comment on the survey? My comment is, we've done surveys in the past, which I found very enlightening. I don't know what that cost is or how it would work into the budget. That's something we'll figure some other time. But we're still working off a lot of that information that we received there. I'd sure like to see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about the survey.
Yep.
We're not getting into.
No, we're talking only about the.
What do the city citizens feel are important? What is it that they would like to see us either do faster or different? Or start new.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be my suggestion. Other comments? Just kind of lift a hand or something, or just jump in. Ms. Carson and then Mr. Moreno.
Well, it was my suggestion that we tried to reach out to the community as much as possible, be it that even if it was just a suggestion box at the rec center, that we had some suggestion boxes at our school sites, at HOA meetings, anything like that, that we can gather some input. I think these HOA meetings that agreed they're not in the South, but they're in the North, and I think that we could be enlightened extremely by the thoughts that come out of there. And so, yeah, a further outreach into the community.
Mr. Moreno?
I just want to say that I think there's no better survey than simply us talking and asking citizens that we converse with and interact with on a daily basis what they want to see from the city in 2011, whether it be us running into each other at a grocery store, which is coming for the people up north, hopefully, Or, whether, Councilwoman Teeter, whether you run into someone at the rec center. I think we can be those ambassadors to make sure that we're just putting the question out there, what do you want to see City Council undertake in 2011? So I think the suggestion box is a great idea. I think using media platforms, social media, Facebook, Twitter are great too. But I think the most important thing is that we're just simply asking the citizens whenever we see them.
My challenge, and I understand I'm just up here trying to spend money, but my challenge is there's 9 of us, and we have 48,000 people out there. There's an awful lot of people that if we don't send a survey similar to what we did before, we'll never reach. I know personally, and again, I'll take full blame or credit for this, I find myself corresponding or talking to people who are friendly. I don't very often show up at the donut shop, which, is my fault, but it's just the way I am. So I'm not sure that our talking to people on the outside will get us what maybe the donut shop has to offer. I'd much rather see us have staff look at what's the cost of doing something, can we fit it into the budget, where we can get a true look at the whole city, rather than the people who are more willing to talk.
I think it's valid feedback. I think the intent was, in planning retreats of past, we've not had any formal conduit in advance of the retreat of citizen input other than the folks that we talk to as individuals. So the suggestion initially was that we use the various email distros that connect into our business community and into our neighbors to neighbors programs and into our boards and commissions, et cetera, to help get additional fodder for discussion onto the table. That can in no way replace the full breadth of what an ultimate survey could do.
Yeah.
But again, we've never linked that to a retreat or a planning effort. So I think if council's on board, I think the committee would suggest that we do as many of those casual efforts as we can in advance of the retreat to have that there, and then through the retreat tee up this concept of a formal survey so that we can get that formalized and take it to staff. Does that make
It does make sense,
as an approach?
and I can live with that. And again, my concern only is that I know that there are individual council members who have individual goals who will come to you and say, I've talked to 1,000 people and they all want the streets painted green, whatever it happens to be.
And that's no different than any other planning
Yes.
retreat.
I know, but so that we understand that when we come together, that's how that works. But yeah, I think that's a great idea to get us to the retreat, but afterwards, I think we're going to need something a little more formal.
Okay.
Does that work? Back to you.
And I think you had some other questions on the board, so let's address any other questions that have come up on any of the coverage thus far.
On the retreat?
Yeah, retreat
Okay,
related.
same thing. I'm not going to use what's on my board right now, so if you have something talking about the retreat, Ms. Teeter.
Yes, I do have something, and I've already discussed this with you, Mr. McEldowney. I totally appreciate the 4 or 5 of you who met that snowy evening. I mean, to adventure out in bad weather conditions. But however, the next time that we have a retreat, I would like all 9 of us, like we used to, we'd have our planners out here, and that way we have maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks in advance or something, actually a day that'll work for everybody. So unfortunately, when they changed it from the 18th, I will not be able to attend the 24th. However, I will be sending my ideas and items to you, Mr. McEldowney, via email. And I have something else to say, but it's not about this.
Not about this, okay. Others? Okay. Again, please, my concerns. My concerns is the short notice. I know it's not short notice to the 4 of you, but short notice to me. I'll be there, but I had to rearrange everything. It makes it extremely tough to do on a couple weeks' notice. I'm also one of those people that would really like to see an agenda before I have a date, so that I know what I'm going in for. Because right now I know I need 10 things of what I think is important, but I really don't know what the agenda is. I did not come to your meeting on Monday, which was again my fault. I could have come. That's not the problem. But myself, I would like to have seen a little more lead in. I'm not quite sure what the timeline was for. And again, my thoughts. In 2011, that's what we're bringing up now. In November, you're going to have 5 new people sitting across this board who will have completely other thoughts on where we're headed. Mr. McEldowney, you have done 10 times what I ever expected to happen, and I appreciate everything you've done. My challenge is, had this pushed out to March or April or May, we probably would not have made a large difference, because you're looking at the 12 time, if that serves me. What we're doing now goes out to 12
It's
rather.
forward-looking.
Yeah, at which time 4 of you will be here, but there'll be 5 brand new faces here who may say, you know what, that's not my direction.
Keep in mind that this process precedes and leads into our budget retreat.
Yes.
And so we're building off of what was a really successful budget retreat last year.
It was excellent.
Fairly productive. I know you're saying we're looking at 2012, yet we just heard progress on a list of 117 items that were accomplished within the year that we left.
Unbelievable.
So the intent here is to build momentum on top of that effort and
that's-
continually fine-tune and corrective steer. Just to kind of hit a couple of your comments before we go forward, had we set this out further, had we set it out shorter, we were going to run into conflicts. The original dates had conflicts. When we looked out over X number of weeks, we had conflicts. The thought was that we needed to get this done so that we had it in hand going into the NLC retreat and be able to have some guidance for how staff, obviously there are items that we set as priorities for last year that staff's going to continue to chase down. I don't think this is going to be as onerous as it was last year. So I know it's frustrating going into a potentially blank slate, and again, there's a bit of a leap of faith there. Not unlike any other planning retreat, we sit down, we talk about priorities, and we structure a discussion around those priorities. So I think at the end of the day, that's the goal. How that specific discussion breaks out over the day and a half or that evening and a day, is that going to make a difference to you in a planning perspective? If it is, then that's information that we need to know. I mean, I want to hear from you.
And it's not, and these were just my
Yeah,
concerns.
we need to
Not
hear
that I'm
those.
asking you to change anything, but just to give you my concerns on what makes me feel more comfortable. But, you know, I mean, we're going to do whatever it takes. Mr. Flannery is the one that has most of the hard work to do. You know, my other concern, my other concern is placement. We have had retreats here in the city. They have been as negative as they can possibly be. Either people don't show up, or people show up who want to sit themselves in the middle of this and think that they're council people. If we push it not far, I'm not saying go to the ends of the earth, but I'm saying you push it out where it's inconvenient. They could still come if they want to come. The problem is if people want to make an impact on what you're going to bring up at this, they can feel free to contact you beforehand. But the last thing I do not enjoy telling people at the retreat, I'm sorry, this is a council retreat, you don't have a voice here. You could have talked to somebody prior, but you're not making the decisions here. And so
It's certainly a risk, and
Yeah.
it got no shortage of discussion in our committee meeting on Monday night. I think for a number of reasons, there continues to be a focus on fiscal responsibility. We obviously save by keeping it close to home. We add some flexibility for those folks that have a closer, remove some challenge for folks that need to be a little closer to work or other obligations. Yes, there is a risk that folks will show up and want to get engaged, and we've had some less than productive meetings as a result. And I think it's going to be incumbent on us as a council to figure out how we deal with that, should that be the
Okay.
case.
Just again,
But
just a
but
concern.
we totally hear you.
Okay. Mr. Marino.
Just some general comments. Maybe to ease a little bit of your concerns, there will be an agenda, and you will get it well in advance of the retreat. We're going to make sure of that. You're going to get to hear a briefing from staff on where they are, a detailed briefing on where they are from the priorities the council set out last year, where they're at, which are in progress, which have been completed. And you're going to get to see a compiled list of the other priorities of other council members before the retreat. That's something that didn't happen at the last retreat. That's going to be really helpful for this retreat. I said in the review committee meeting that I was extremely impressed at how democratic the process was last year. I mean, you could have put anything on your list. You could have said, I want the World Cup at Dick's Stadium. And that would have made it on.
It worked.
We completely did not edit anyone's requests. And that's going to be the same for this year again. Because I think we get our best ideas and our best work when, we have some practical things that we need to complete, but we also have a dream list, if you will. And, one of the dreams that we had last year was, and I think it was a top priority for the majority of us, was grocery store in the Northern Range. Now, we have an incentive agreement with King Soopers. That dream's becoming a reality. So I just want to encourage everyone, when you submit your priorities, to, your heart's desire, and same with the citizens. Anything that you want on there, please let us know, and we'll make sure it gets on there.
Okay. And again, these are just concerns. I'm going to be right there with you, but you need to hear. Is there any other concerns strictly about the retreat now? Ms. Carson.
Mine's not a concern, but yeah, Mr. Flannery, I did receive your message, and I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I do think it would benefit us if we had department heads attend the first half of our retreat and come in and give us an update per department where they're at, a briefing such
Okay.
as.
Mr. Flannery,
presenting-
because that goes to you, is that a doable thing by the date that you were given?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, it is. The only thing I would mention is possibly the timing, since you probably want to hear from Public Works, big department, Community Development, Parks and Rec, Economic Development. So those are pretty big ones. What we could do on our side is structure it so they have maybe 10, 15 minutes so that we can fit them in from, let's say, 8:30 to noon or 8:30 to 1 so they could work through lunch or whatever.
That would be the second day, wouldn't it?
That would be
Correct.
That would be the second day, on Friday.
Which, Ms. Carson, you requested it up front, didn't you?
Yeah, but I haven't thought about it.
That's another option. I don't know what the thought is for Thursday night, but that could be another part of it.
It's certainly an option. I think, again, I want to differentiate between a strategic planning retreat and an operational review. And if we want to sit down and get departmental reviews on sort of what's up in Public Works, that's different than sitting down and saying, I think as Ms. Teeter has thrown out, I want lights down Tower Road next year. So I think having the list of accomplishments and the facts in front of us of those things that are in progress relative to last year's priorities, and being able to focus on those things that are, sort of the lights on Tower Road, I want, whatever. I want to see the dog track redeveloped, by October of next year, whatever. Then those are things that I think having staff present, and this is why I asked Mr. Flannery after the committee meeting if they could accommodate, it may be helpful to facilitate discussion or to bounce questions off of them, or for them to hear firsthand sort of our brainstorm, so that when the staff retreat gets underway, it's not a matter of, well, this is what council talked about. There's actually a firsthand recollection of how that discussion sort of got underway, if that makes sense. And again, it's council's choice on how we go here. I don't know that we want to sit and spend all day talking through departmental review after departmental review as much as envision, if you will, everybody brings forward 10 items, and that everybody's list of 10 items gets distilled into 10 or 15 or 20 top items. If we spend our time talking about that in the same way that we did last year, to me, that's a much more productive event than sitting and intaking a lot of information about paving projects.
Ms. Carson, back to you, because that's not,
Absolutely fine, Mr. McEldowney.
that, then we're okay?
I just want to make sure we're,
Yeah, it was just a request from Ms. Carson. I just wanted to make sure everybody's happy. Okay, any other comments about this particular item?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Flannery?
If I
Yes.
could.
Yeah, you
So if I could,
have the last word.
what we would do is we'd give you probably a written report of what the accomplishments or where we are, so that you have that in a document. And then, would the staff come a half day, or would it be a full day, or the night before? I think that would be really good.
I think most effective would be the top half of the first, the full day.
Okay.
Right? So Friday,
Day.
the first half of that day, and that would give us time on our own, the second half of the second day, to round out that discussion, get more into review, planning, et cetera.
Okay.
Does that make
Great.
sense?
Does that work with you, Ms. Carson? Yeah. Mr. Marino, did you have a comment?
Just, yeah, to emphasize Mr. McEldowney's point, just, I see those department heads as being kind of a primer on the discussion of the budget, maybe some of the top highlighted items that council requested in 2010, and how those departments implemented those. Something that gives us a little taste, not a full in-depth analysis, but a primer.
Good, thank you very much.
I think we're in. Mr. Flannery, so you're okay and you feel comfortable with what we're asking?
Well, the staff has been pretty much working on these issues, so I don't think it's that difficult to put it all together. As a matter of fact,
Okay.
I think Mr. Aker and Mr. McBroom have departments working on those lists now.
Okay. Are you okay?
I'm good.
Do you have a list of who can attend on that Thursday and Friday?
So far, everybody's able to attend, except for the Friday session, and Ms. Teeter is unfortunately not able to make that Friday. The correspondence I received from Mr. Benson was that he was for the Friday and both the Thursday and the Friday.
Okay.
He initially, it actually is Friday evening.
Okay.
Yeah, I received a follow-up note from him.
Okay,
He's
so we're all okay? Okay. You're done?
done on the retreat. On the review
More admin
process.
stuff?
I'm sorry?
Oh,
On the review process, obviously.
review process.
We completed Mr. Gaylor's first half of last year, review
Yes.
this afternoon. As was put forward last meeting, he had done some research on some software platforms to potentially take over
Okay.
for the process. I think what we would like to do, there is a lot to discuss on what we do going forward from a review process. Frequency, tools, when, the Monday nights aren't working, what we were doing before wasn't necessarily working, there's got to be something in the middle. I think a key piece of what we talked about at the committee meeting last week is queuing up a portion of the retreat to talk about what we do going forward. So rather than try and solve it in the chambers tonight, we want to make sure that we spend some time at the retreat talking about how that works. So I would say separate and distinct from your top X list of priorities, this is your chance, again, to brainstorm what do you want to see out of that planning effort.
Okay.
How does that work going forward? And let's spend time sorting through this once and for all to try and really cement that process for the coming year.
Okay. And you'll have the time assigned
We'll have
on the
a
agenda.
breakout portion of the agenda toward that end. Sorry, Mr. Marino.
Comment?
I just had a question on that. Since the proposed company that we're thinking about going with for the new review template is a local company, is there a possibility that we could have a representative come and kind of give a tutorial to the council on the new template?
Yeah, we can do a couple different things. I think the tool itself, we can actually point you out to the website to see the software and look at a demo of the software. It's a matter of configuration to our questions and the frequency at which we want to use the tool. So I think that's the part of the process that needs the discussion with this body.
Okay. On another topic, would somebody mind going out and making sure that they knew if they were here for a reason, the people that just left, the father and son? Is that okay?
That's Mr. Leary. He's on the Quality Community Foundation.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
And they
Okay, I just didn't know if there was, I didn't want to do them. Okay, go ahead. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Comments on that item? Ms. Teeter?
Well, Jason, I think you answered something for me. So when I email you my 10 priorities, I'll also put in how frequently I believe that a city manager and our city attorney should be evaluated. Could we ask that of all 9 then?
Yeah, that was the ask just now, is that.
Okay, I just wanted to put that into their minds to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this particular item? So I think you're okay. You'll have an agenda to us and to staff.
Mr. Marino's working on that agenda, and
We might see it at when?
End of this week? Does that work?
Before Friday?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, everybody okay with that? Mr. Flannery, okay? If not, we know where you live. Any other item, Mr. McEldowney?
No, thank you for your time.
One more piece on that. I do have the form from last year about the brainstorming priorities list. So anyone that would like a hard copy, I'll go ahead and just print out 9 copies and leave them on your dais on Monday,
Okay.
next meeting.
Won't be here.
If anyone wants a hard copy of that. Okay.
And
And you're welcome to do it informally. If you want to
I guess we do
literally
have
throw it in
next
an email,
week after.
your list of items, I mean, it doesn't have to be fancy, so
Okay.
whatever works for you.
good. Okay, thank you. Now, Ms. Teeter, new item?
Yes, and this may be one of my wish list, Mr. Flannery. This has been brought to my attention before, and I noticed it Saturday evening driving, along the golf course there. And there's not very much business a lot of time at the Bison Grill, and I think a lot of that may have to do with lack of signage. There's only a dark black sign that said Buffalo Run. We have no street lights on that Chambers either, so I may put that on my list.
Is that
It
all?
just might generate some more business.
Okay, is that all? Mr. Marino, this is administrative business different. No? Ms. Carson? I just took, no, okay. You have something, Ms. Snyder? Administrative.
Yes. City Manager Flannery, I know that we've had several discussions about the trash can ordinance and the problems that have been coming out of that. And as I understand it, we've put a temporary moratorium on that. Could somebody just speak on that real briefly so that everyone will be informed of where we're at with that, please?
Sure,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have put a temporary stay, basically not enforcing that provision of the code while staff puts together a few ideas and rewrite to propose back to you as the council for direction. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just wanted to get the word out. I've been letting people know, and I was told that staff was letting people know as well. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are working on a revision and looking at some ways that we can help some folks and things like that. So at this time, that ordinance is on hold. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before I start? Because I've got a number of things. Okay, first thing, Regional Air Quality Commission. I'm sitting on that board now. It is extremely important. It's something that's been pulled together by the governor. They are trying to figure out the statistics and where our levels will be for everything having to do with air. In 2002, long before any of us were even here, Commerce City said, we're not giving any money to anybody. We don't want to belong to anything. It's not between 56th and 96th. We don't care about it. I think we now care about it. Right now, in budget for organizations, there is not a lot of extra money. If I used Littleton's figure, what they're paying, because their population is very similar to ours. Looks like it'll be about $4,500 a year to join. My personal feeling is it is extremely important because We have the only oil refinery in the state. And this is the group that is going to try to put limits on everything, and we need to represent our people, our businesses. And it has been a concern, and I have had to take a more active part, I guess would be a good way to politically correct way to put it. If we're not there, there are enough people on the committee who would limit us to bicycles and bring the animals back. Not that that's the major part of the group, and I'm really part of it, but I would really like us to put both feet into this organization. If possible, I would like council to give me approval and to see if Mr. Flannery can find $4,500 to pay into this so that we are, I'm sitting on the board, but our city is not contributing. Comments from council, Mr. McEldowney?
Yeah, I didn't actually realize we weren't a paying member. I knew that you were obviously sitting on the board. I do think it's critical that we have a seat at the table and a voice, and I don't think we have as great a voice if we're not a paying member. That said, I think it would also be helpful, given the policy nature of that body, to have updates occasionally from you on what the subjects under discussion are. And if that would at times involve bringing somebody from the RAC here to give a primer, I think that would be helpful. I know
Be a great idea.
through Dr. Cog, we've had a number of discussions around air quality, et cetera. And I know it's certainly one of those subjects that can be sort of doom and gloom and can pit sort of the far left versus the far right. And I think most of the answers lie somewhere in the fat middle. And so I think it's important that we have a chance to have those discussions here and have you carry forward a true voice of Commerce City to those discussions.
That'd be terrific. Does anyone sitting on council have a challenge with me requesting of staff just to see if they can come up with the money to pay for that membership and that feels this is it? The other thing that I would request is that we do set some time in a future meeting to have one of the staff from the RAC come and give us the primer, which would be really good. And then what I will do is I will start sending. We have an agenda each month, and then we have the notes afterwards. And I have been sending them to staff, but I have been derelict in not sending it to council. Would that, anybody have a challenge with that? Mr. Marino?
I just want to say I'm okay with that, just as long as the actual appropriation of the monies comes before council for approval.
No, it would have to.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, it would have to. First thing what Mr. Flannery would have to do is say, yes, we can come up with it. Then he would have to come before us to say, is this okay to pay?
Fantastic.
That would be procedure.
Great.
Any other comments? Mr. Flannery, you okay with that? Okay. Mr. Flannery, I'm not even sure who, I think it's Mr. Aker, but I'm not sure. But maybe staff to staff, if we could get enough time to have a primer with the RAC. Okay. Mr. Gaylor, did you have a comment on that?
I just wanted to make sure, for the minutes, then it'll show that the council authorized the city manager to check on the budgetary issue, just to bring back the appropriation
Yes.
then? Okay.
Yes. And it may come that the money's not there and there's nothing to vote on. So, but in case, so that would be great. Hate to keep doing this. Metro Mayor's Caucus and North Area Transit Alliance are both wanting to go out and suggest that when it goes to a vote for fast tracks.
Heard that on the radio.
Yes, that their request is that it will be not less than 3, not more than 4. And what that means is 3 cents on $10 purchase or 4 cents on a $10 purchase. The hardest part when I talk in the audience to the groups that I talk to is when I say 0.4, they think that's 4% rather than 4/10. And that's the important part. It's 4 cents, which is presently what we're paying. What I'm going to do is real quickly, they've done a number of citizen groups that have come together, and they've said that they're not as interested in the cost as the time. what they keep coming back in these focus groups is, tell us what it's going to cost and how soon can we have it. The challenge has been that the north side has, let's say, been forgotten. And without extra money, we're going to be forgotten longer. This would be a definitely metro-wide thing. The challenge is with both North Area Transit Alliance and Metro Mayors. If I sign off as the mayor and say, yes, I think that's a great idea, but 5 of you decide, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm actually going to go out and counter everything you do, it doesn't make sense. So what I'm requesting is that you all look into it, and maybe staff could do a short presentation, either from Dr. Cog or from NADA, North Area Transit Alliance, that says this is why we're doing this. But I've got all kinds of figures here. You know, there's 56% of the groups that they did said they want to build out by 2018, and they'll pay the 0.4. The funny part is when you get down to the 0.1 or the 0.2, 79% oppose going for 0.1. Their response is, if that's all the money you're going to do and you're only going to bring in four years earlier, why bother me? Either get it done or don't get it done. So I'm not really looking for answers now, but I'm hoping that you'll go out. Maybe we can get a presentation soon on that particular item, because for me to sign for Metro Mayors and agree to it, if 4, 3, or 1 are going to make a difference, you know, you're just battling your own group, and it doesn't make sense. Mr. McEldowney, did you want to make a comment, or?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I think you know, watching the correspondence for NADA in particular, I think it's very well put, and that it doesn't make sense for you to act as an individual on a body like that. I think we need to come up with a position as a council. I think it would be helpful to have a more formal update if we can, if the time will allow. I don't know when you need to have those that sign-off submitted. I know RTD's got their item coming up.
The end of this month.
But if we could work that in and then come away with a formal council position, whether that be by resolution or otherwise, so that you have the confidence to carry forward with whatever
That would be
position.
terrific. Mr. Flannery, would you be able to do that, knowing that really next Monday is the only time we can do it, because the following Monday we're off, and then RTD is meeting? If we could just do real short on why, and I have a lot of those numbers, is that a?
It may be just staff. We may not be able to get RTD.
Oh,
but
no. And
we can probably do that.
It's just staff. I mean, I could do it myself, but I think it would be better coming from staff saying, this is why these groups are doing it. So if we can push that off. So do I have approval from council to have staff look into that and bring that back to us? Okay, thank you. I still have 2 more things, and I apologize tonight. We have had a request, and I know I was going to do this. We've had a request from a city, an industrial city outside of Mexico City called Toluca, for a sister city program. Right now, we are only bringing in information. We are not making any thoughts. There's communications going back and forth. There's been communications with the Mexican consulate here. There's really nothing. I just want to let you know that we've had requests. We are looking into it, but no action to be taken at this time. Strictly so that you know it's there, but if you have an idea that says, you know what, I don't want any part of a sister city, or I don't want, this would be the time to do it. Right now, it's just information. An action item will be sometime later. Okay, anybody have a challenge with that? Okay, last item. Some of you are going to Washington, D.C. for NLC. I am more than satisfied that Mayor Pro Tem Snyder is going to be more than willing and more than able to be able to handle this particular trip. Due to some personal things, I am not going to be able to make that trip. My challenge is that in April 19th, NLC is doing an extremely large international conference in Seattle. There has been a request for me to speak there because of the things I've been doing on my own here. What I'm requesting is approval from the council to be able to go to Seattle for this particular NLC conference. It's, I think, 3 days, so it's 5 days total. But there will not be an expense. Is it in there? Does it have my name in it? There's not I will not be having an expense for going to Washington. So hopefully I'm going to consider it a wash.
The only thing I have is I didn't understand what you meant, that they want you to speak on things you're doing on your own. If you want to share that with me. Otherwise, I don't care.
The challenge has been that the China has not been a direction from this council. It's almost been a negative. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff on my own time with my own money. But it's been recognized here, and so I am going to stay involved, even if it's not one of our particular top 10 items. So does anyone have a challenge with that?
I just want to point out, each of you received this newspaper. It is the event that you're speaking of. They do have an article on page 3 if you want to learn more about it. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty big deal.
It is. They're actually bringing Chinese companies there, and it's what we want to do here in Denver. They're bringing Chinese companies there who will do the presentations, and they may say, I am Mr. Whoever, and I represent this particular company. This is what we do, and we want to come to Seattle, Denver, wherever it happens to be. This time it'll be Seattle. Who's here that wants to help us do that? Metro Mayors is hoping to be able to do the same thing here in Denver, where we can bring those companies here to Denver and show them. Any of you who saw the Chinese that came from Nanning, their eyes are this big. This is a wide open world for them. And we may as well get some of our money back. Does anybody have a challenge with me going forward with this?
Mr. Mayor, could we have a vote on that?
That's, yeah. Mr. Marino, I'd need a...
I'm willing to make the motion.
Okay, Mr. Marino?
I would move to approve the mayor attending the conference in Seattle in April, and I will put this in there, and if it's okay with you, a friendly amendment to for the cost not to exceed the trip otherwise if he were going to Washington.
Okay? Yeah.
Good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Second.
Okay, his name was up. Mr. Johnson had a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Thank you very much, and I will make the city proud. Mr. Flannery, okay? Good. Actually, I'm sorry, but that's it, and I'm sorry I took so much time, but it just seemed like everything backed up altogether. Reports, Mr. McEldowney.
Nothing further.
Mr. Johnson. Ms. Teeter.
No report.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes, just real briefly, since I wasn't here last week, I did attend the Metro North Gala with several of the council members, and I also attended last week a stakeholders meeting of the Boys and Girls Club at Kearney, and things are moving along. I think we'll be having a presentation shortly here in the next few weeks from that group to bring an update on where we're at with that. So things are moving along. And also, I attended the Let's Move Commerce City event, and we froze, but we attended on Saturday. And that was a really great event, and I wanted to say thank you to the staff and to the Rapids and to everyone that was involved for coming out and supporting that great event. We had lots of kids and parents out there, so they were willing to freeze to come out and get educated on nutrition and exercise and all the good things that come from that. So thank you.
Ms. Carson.
I attended the RTD Town Hall meeting at the Armory. Our own Mr. Benson was part of the panel. It was a very interesting meeting and a town hall meeting. It's very contentious here with residents up north because, Mary, you are right. I think the feeling is the land of the forgotten. You pay, but you've been forgotten. So I do agree that I would say the sentiment is win. Don't tell me how much, tell me when.
Yep.
But I'm still not sure it would pass. I do think it's something that no matter how upset we are that it hasn't been properly done or this or that, it is something that I think everybody setting up here knows is a need. And so I think we do have to support it. But I do think that we have to be very aggressive of saying, you got to bring those lines up here. And then we're not just going to take just one, and we're not going to take, because you ran it through Thornton, that served us. And, it doesn't, I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done there. But like I said, it was a very interesting meeting, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the sentiment of the public, so good luck.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Marino?
I don't really have much to report other than I did also attend the Metro North Gala, and congratulations to our very own Ms. Cordero, who was named Leader of the Year. That was really nice and a nice thing to celebrate. I do have some good news. I was appointed to the Human Development Steering Committee for National League of Cities.
Congratulations.
So that group has a lot to do with CDBG funds. So don't you worry, don't worry, Ms. Snyder. I'm going to make sure that we protect those funds. Just one other thing. I really appreciate the camera and its current location. I've had a few citizens tell me on Channel 8 that the close angle from right here was particularly unflattering for me. So I appreciate the distance.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to go through the whole list of things. I've probably been at everything that everybody else is at and a couple extra. The only one I want to mention, that is, I went and listened to Senator Michael Johnston, who has the area just south of us. And he spoke on education and taxing for the state, and he spoke at the Mosaic Foundation, which I've become somewhat involved in, and it is a group of Turkish Muslims who are trying to change the attitude towards their religion as a whole, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. They actually do a trip to Turkey once a year that I was honored to be chosen for last year, and if anybody is interested, if they'd get in touch with me, I could give them some information. And that's probably, and then we'll go to Mr. Flannery, because I always forget you, and I don't know why, and then we'll go to Mr. Gaylor. Mr. Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, I only have one item. It's to mention that the location, Mr. Cerna mentioned the PAC meeting and letting the public know that they're welcome. I wanted to just follow up with that and say that the meeting is this Thursday, February 10th, from noon to 6:30 at Swansea Rec Center, 2650 East 49th Avenue in Denver. And public comment is at 6 p.m., and then there's a CDOT open house from 11 to 12.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gaylor?
The only thing I have to report is, in my absence, Karen Stevens will be acting city attorney, so I'll
Okay.
be missing the next couple council meetings for you.
Have a really nice
I'll
time.
be thinking of you.
Yeah, right. Mr. Flannery, do I just call up Mr. Cordero, or do you do that?
That's fine. I think he has a brief report tonight. I
Okay.
think he's handed out the handout, and was going to touch base on one or two.
Terrific.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I am very much aware that I'm between you and adjournment, so I will be very brief.
It's okay. This was really nice tonight.
You have two reports. One is a written report. The other one is a new, revamped, more readable tracking sheet, hopefully. And it has really fancy symbols there that tell you when we're supporting or monitoring or opposing bills. Essentially, in my report, I went over the number of bills that have been introduced. There were, in addition to the ones that I have there were another approximately 60 bills that were introduced late today. We're getting close to that top number there. I went over a few bills that I'm tracking. Among them, there is a bill to amend the medical marijuana statute that we're following. That's House Bill 1043, House Bill 1075. There's a number of bills that are designed to basically take back faster that was passed in 2009, but those bills are not they're not actually faring very well, and I don't think they will. That's one of them, 1075. There's also 1115, which had something interesting happening at the committee passed the committee in the House passed it and sent it to the committee of the whole, and then the committee of the whole sent it back to the original committee saying to please look at it again. I've never seen that happen. I don't know what's going to happen when it gets brought back. But it was a unanimous vote, which was interesting. And then Senate Bill 95, it's another faster repeal. I provided you on page number 3 with the list that the Joint Budget Committee put together. These are going to be the bills that will be part of the large bill, the bills that will balance our budget. We have a $1.3 billion budget gap between the rest of budget year 2011 and budget year 2012. And so there are bills here to satisfy the $200 million that are in the gap for this year and the $1.1 billion gap next year, and everybody's going to be suffering. And that's really the main objective of this year's session. I would say secondary to that is probably economic development and jobs. And then it's really a time to really get to know legislators and begin to build trust. And probably next year is when we'll see more bigger items. If you have any questions about the items that I'm tracking and the position that we've taken, of course, you know how to reach me. I'll be happy to tell you a little bit about what we're hearing about those. Any questions?
Comments from council?
Appreciate your update. Thank you.
Great format.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last thing, Mr. Flannery, you forgot to talk about us going down to see the governor and the county ED people at DU. The governor pretty much said what Mr. Cordero said. Everybody's going to suffer equally. That's the way it is, but that he's very interested in international. He's very interested in being business friendly. I am happy with how he spoke at this particular item. So if there be no further business come before this board, we'll be adjourned. We okay? When do you leave, Mr. Gaylor?